Welcome to the Delvin Cox Experience, the podcast in which each week I am on a one-man mission to unite our culture through diversity. I'm your host, Delvin Cox, and this week on the podcast, I have a special guest. Let them know who you are, brother.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brian H. Waters here from the wrestling realm. From let's see what else.
It's a lot.
The Ring of Wrestling's Mackmania, and also the host of the Breaking Through Glass Ceilings podcast, which is on hiatus right now, but I'm still there. And just the Millennial Media Mavens, and not.
Oh, there's more. There's more. Keep going.
I mean, you just Google Brian H. Waters at this point.
That is very accurate, man. How you doing, man? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
As always, we like to start the podcast off with the 5 for 5. 5 questions, 5 answers to get the ball rolling. Brian, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Question number 1. Since you're a wrestling fan like myself, who is your favorite black wrestler? Of all time, by the way.
Ooh, The Rock.
That's a good answer. That is a really good answer, yeah?
Yeah, The Rock.
All right. Question number 2. If you could reboot any 90s black TV show, which one are you rebooting?
See, that's tough, right? Because, sorry, when you say reboot, we gotta have all the same cast. Everybody's
you don't have to. You could make a new cast, or you can not. It's up to you. I'll give you an example. Last dude I had on this podcast, I asked a similar question to. And he was like, he reboot Living Single with a modern cast, like with Tiffany Haddish and who else he said? A few other people he said, but a modern version of Living Single.
I like it. I'm trying to think of, you know what I'm gonna reboot? Because I want to see them as adults. Smart guy. I want to see.
That's a good idea.
I want to see how smart. Plus, it's Essence Atkins. Anything she's in is gold. But I want to see how far they can go. Like, would the smart guy's kids be smart? Or would he have some like sort of learning disability and you test the patience, right? Or he just want to be a regular kid. And then you have like somebody like Mo and see how his kid would be.
I like that idea because people don't mention Smart Guy
all
the time when it comes to black TV shows. And I used to love Smart Guy. Smart Guy was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that answer. Question number 3. What's the dumbest thing you think you ever done as a kid?
I like these questions. They make you think. I don't know. I didn't do a lot of crazy stuff. I had fun, but I'm trying to really think. I don't know. Man, I'm trying not to stall too much, but I'm really trying to think what could have been like the dumbest thing. And then of course, like when we finish, I'm gonna have all like the answers of why didn't I say this or why didn't I say that, But
to clarify, to give you a little help, when I say kid, I usually mean from college on down.
Okay.
Because I don't like to feel like, oh, when you're 10, because, half of us don't remember stuff when we did when we were 10 years old. But, college years, I consider kids stuff. We do silly stuff then. So, yeah.
So let me think about high school, because I'm pretty sure there's some stuff there. Besides, like, like not being confident or dropping the ball with a lady. I think the dumbest thing. No, that's not it. Probably not. This sounds so minor, but probably not continue to play baseball in high school. I think I could have maybe got a junior college scholarship.
Oh, that'd been cool.
So I was good in middle school. That's probably what it is. In middle school, probably not play like after a situation where the coach. I probably should have pressured my parents more. I don't know, man.
All right. Question number 4. If you could pick one album to be the soundtrack to your life, what would that album be?
Ooh. soundtrack to my life. I'm gonna hit people's. I'm gonna make people do some research with this one. Canton Spirituals live in Memphis 1.
What's the name of it again?
The Canton Spirituals.
The Canton
live in
Spirituals?
Memphis.
Okay.
So I went to the gospel route.
Okay.
But yeah, I went the gospel route. But then if anything, the blueprint one.
That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
really good one. The Canton Spirituals, Volume 1, you said?
Live in Memphis.
Okay.
It's like if you more than likely if you Google Canton Spirituals, it's the first album that come up.
Got it.
It was the one with Fix It Jesus. That's the one that like put them on a map. Like
Okay.
they were around, but that made them national.
Okay. I'm gonna check this out then. I done got it saved in my phone and everything now.
Oh, all right.
All right. Question number 5.
Uh-huh.
Thanos is coming to destroy the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You could pick 5 wrestlers. Any wrestlers you want to help you stop Thanos. And let me add this caveat. Their gimmicks are allowed. So if it's the Undertaker, if you pick the Undertaker has all his special powers that he has in the ring and everything that comes with being the Undertaker.
Yeah.
So who are the 5 wrestlers you counting on to help you save the earth?
All right, so you got to get John Cena in there because he's Captain America. And as somebody who don't know much about the Marvel life, I'll say like I know that much about it that John Cena's Captain America, right?
That's pretty accurate.
So he's number 1.
I like that answer because John Cena, 1, you can't see me, so they can't see him, and then 2, John Cena never gives up, so he's not going down easy.
Mm-hmm. Number 2, I'm taking the immortal Hulk Hogan, right?
Okay.
Just for the simple fact he's immortal. Just go back in the 80s and 90s.
He doesn't lose.
So, right. Number 3, I'm going with the best wrestler in the world today, the greatest man in the sport walking today.
I'm trying to hear what we're going to say.
The tribal chief, Roman Reigns.
Oh, okay, Roman Reigns, okay.
I'm going with Roman Reigns. You got to take him, right? And then I'm going with somebody who I just talked to today, the almighty Bobby Lashley. He talks about, quick plug, on the Mackmania podcast, he talked about his upcoming match with Brock Lesnar and how he can look at somebody's eyes and see if they got a soul. And he said that he could see Brock don't have a soul. So I'm picking Bobby Lashley.
And
then I'm going
I'm going to tell you this about this, because you said it. If anybody else said that, I would be like, get the hell out of here. Right. But because it's Bobby Lashley and the way that man looks, I'm going to be like, yes, sir. I feel you. That man is in incredible shape. I love Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley is the man.
Yep. And then last but not least, we're going to stay inside of Roman's family, but we're going old school.
Okay.
And I don't want Haku. I want Ming.
Oh yeah.
Because
Ming's
with that target death grip, I mean, they still say he's still like one of the most dangerous men on the planet. Yeah, so I want him. So those are my 5: Hulk Hogan, John Cena, Roman Reigns, Bobby Lashley, and Ming. They'll take out Thanos.
I like that. I like that a lot. So, man, let me ask you this before we get into everything. What got you into wrestling?
Because I feel like this answer should be printed somewhere now.
I asked this because you have all the belts in your background. You made kind of a whole career out of wrestling. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot to do that. And the thing about it I always think is cool is, which I love about today, by the way, Black wrestling fans are probably more prominent than they've ever been. And it's dope.
I think it's we have more platform.
Yes.
We've been around. The thing is, though, when you really think about it, it's much easier to podcast now. It's easier to create your own lane in writing, where before you kind of had to like find that job, right? And then you go and you're just so happy to get in the door that something that's such a niche like wrestling is not as easy to say, hey, let me pitch this, that, and the other, right? So that's what I think it is. I think, we've always been around. Like, I grew up, like, I went to I went to Catholic school, and from kindergarten to about 5th or 6th grade is predominantly white. About sixth grade is that influx of students who, because it was K through 8, well, preschool through 8th grade, and that influx of students whose parents didn't want to send them to like a public middle school, they would come to my school. So that's where you would start to see the shift every year, more Black students. And a lot of us was into wrestling, even when I got to high school. So I just think that the Black wrestling fan now is louder because we have more of a platform. It's easier to start our own platform. And I was always into it. My mother was pregnant with me in 1986. Everybody didn't have remotes for their televisions. In their room, she was on bed rest. So my dad and my grandfather and my uncle would leave the channel on. They would walk out, leave wrestling on, or what have you. And she hated it. Growing up, she hated wrestling because my grandfather and my uncles would watch it all the time. So time fast forward, she started getting hooked. And then she said, every time wrestling came on, I started kicking. And she goes, this is a boy. It's like, what? It's like, my grandma was like, are you sure? She's like, trust me, this is a boy. And, when I was born, my uncle was, I have an uncle that's 11 years older than me. Shout out to my Uncle Troy. He always had me, he would always watch it. And then I would be with him. So he was like the big brother. So a lot of times growing up, when he would order the pay-per-views, he would give me the tapes. What I didn't realize was he was giving it to me. So sometimes I was like, okay, I finished watching, here's the tape back. Then he record over. I'm like, well, so it was like 5 wrestling tapes. Royal Rumble 90. No, that wasn't that. We recorded that ourselves. In Your House. No, sorry. It was Survivor Series 95. World War III. Those 2 tapes was the ones that I had like kept and realized like, wait, he's not asking for it. He's back. And then we had ordered Royal Rumble 96, WrestleMania 9, WrestleMania 11. We recorded it. And when we didn't have cable in like the end of 97, the middle of 97, and I have access to what was going on, but a lot of times I come home from school and I would just watch those tapes over and over again in rotation, to the point when the WWE Network started in 2014. I knew all of that stuff by heart. Like I was watching, I can almost word for word give you the broadcast of WrestleMania 9. I know a lot of people hate that WrestleMania. I've tried watching it from everybody's eyes. That's actually still one of my favorites. And I'll go on the hill and defend WrestleMania 9.
Is that the one with Lex Luger?
No, Hogan won the title after Yokozuna won the title.
Yes,
in Las Vegas,
Nevada.
One.
I do remember that one.
So yeah, I was just a wrestling fan, pretty much all my life. And this is something I've just always been into.
Do you remember the first match you ever watched?
Oh man, come on. I'll tell you, the first, I guess you could call this the first wrestling memory, even though I don't remember it happening at the time. But when I watched it later, I remember going home to watch it, was Warrior Hogan, WrestleMania 6. And I remember leaving church, and my grandfather, he was taking me with him, and my dad was like, oh, you're supposed to come with me. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to go with my Bobby. And he was like, nah, he coming with me. We're going to watch wrestling. And I remember getting, in the car. And this was back in 1990 where kids could sit in the front seat. Yeah. And I remember sitting there, and he's sitting there telling the deacons, he said, yeah, we get ready to go home, watch wrestling. He said, you didn't see Warrior was running this way, Hogan was running this way, there's crisscrossing. And later on, I didn't, I didn't remember, had that memory, but I didn't know what it was from until 1999, I think. Yeah, 99 or 2000, when they did the WWF WrestleMania, the Legacy tapes. And that's when I started buying them individually. And when I bought WrestleMania 6 was the first one I bought from, shout out to Suncoast Videos, or maybe it was Sam Goody. And when I bought it, I watched it, I was like, oh, this was the preview. Okay. So that's when I'm like, that's probably like my first memory. I have a vivid memory of watching Macho Man get the snake from Jake the Snake when he had the snake bite Macho Man. I remember sitting in my grandmother's house watching that. I have some memory for some reason watching the Texas Tornado and Mr. Perfect's feud. So those are some of like my earliest memories in wrestling.
That's pretty cool, because when I was growing up, my earliest memories of wrestling was Saturday Night Main Event.
Okay.
Because that used to come on after Saturday Night Live. And I
Mm-hmm.
used to love watching that show. And I remember all the whole thing with the Mega Powers Unites and things like that. I was like 5 years old when that stuff happened.
The handshake.
Yeah, I remember all that stuff, and that kind of was one of my gateways into wrestling, man.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
what got you into podcasting to begin with? Because I know you. One thing I like about your podcast are that they're very crisp, they're very professional. You
Oh,
know what you're
thank you.
doing. You got the background set up. Everything's always comes out really good, and you do a lot of podcasts with a lot of different people. You do a lot with cool people. What got you into podcasting? What was your first podcast you listened to? Who was some of the people you listen to now or even back then? And what made you think that you could do it?
So let's be clear. Are you talking about podcasting or video just for YouTube? Because I got two different stories, if that make any sense.
Oh, we can go to both of those stories, by the way.
Okay.
So both are interesting.
Years ago, I went to community college, graduated, associate's degree in general studies, which is an extension of high school. But if somebody who didn't get scholarships, that's probably the dumbest thing I did was not read my books as a child. Because had I read the books and instead of skimmed through it, I would have, probably been able. I probably could have had a full ride somewhere because I could retain the information. In other words, I'm smart. I would just skim through it to get the answer. But so I went to community college, graduated. In between, I took a break. It was supposed to be 1 year, ended up being 3. I started creating videos on YouTube here and there called the B Water Sports Show. And this is around the time of 2006 or 7, because like the last season of Brian Billick's tenure with the Ravens. Okay. So I would always do stuff, and I'm using like Windows Movie Maker to figure out. And then at the time I was working at Rent a Center, and me and my former co-worker, a guy named Anthony, we created the A and B conversation. So we started doing the show in my apartment. And, I stuck with that. Then fast forward, I would do like wrestling content here and there. Well, my Uncle James, on my dad's side, my aunt's husband, when he died in 2010, I was close. I went to go check on my aunt, see my cousin. So, I was calling my cousin one day, just checking on him. So we was talking wrestling. And so, how you got that one family member in the house who like always into wrestling just as much as you? Their household ordered every pay-per-view. So like, if we went over there on, say, a Sunday, that was a pay-per-view Sunday, I would see like the beginning. And then you could go, or if we went over there, we didn't go over my aunt's house that much. She lived on the west side of Baltimore. But when we go over there, they might have a tape plan from a different wrestling event, just a random wrestling event. So when Uncle James died, I talked to my cousin Clifford. So we was just talking about wrestling. Like anytime we always linked up, and we was talking about the business. And he said, man, they got these people on YouTube that do this stuff and they don't be knowing what they talk about. Yeah. I said, well, we could do a show. Really? So I put, I started thinking like, all right, we'll do a show called Wrestle Talk with Bear and B-Dub. People get bored enough, you can find the content on YouTube. So I started doing that. Well, we started getting some traction, and he got in trouble, couldn't do the show no more. All this is happening while I'm going to Morgan State University. I made my return to school in the fall of 2010. The spring of 2011, I have a TV video production class. And I'm sitting there. So backtrack real quick. The fall semester for my research project, we did research and how to research the analytics for a Facebook page. And we was doing my Wrestle Talk with Bear and B-Dub page. Fast forward, my friend Danny's sitting there. So we all introduced, how the first day of class, everybody got to introduce themselves, right? So I said, who I am, what I do, whatever. So my friend Danny's going, and he has a wrestling show. I'm like, huh? So if anybody's ever seen the Wrestling Wrealm, especially the videos, you'll see that my co-host is 6'7".
Yes.
So I hear somebody in the back going, there's nothing wrong with that. So I turn around, 6'7" dude. I was like, that's the guy who's in my other class. I think he on a basketball team or something. So he goes, I said, you a wrestling fan? Yes, I am. Oh, okay. Hand him a business card. Well, he goes check out the show. He's, oh man, it's cool. The content is there, whatever. So every day we just kept talking wrestling, just like out of class. I mean, to a point where you know how you might have like after, like, say your last class is at 2:30, right? And some of your friends got their classes at 3. Well, they would go to their 3 o'clock class and come out at like 4:50, 4 o'clock, and see us still talking. We just talking like all types of wrestling. So we ended up creating a wrestling realm, and that's when I started the video side. Now, the podcasting part. In 2018, I was in 2018, the wrestling realm, we was able to be consistent every day, like not every day, but you know, weekly or whatever for the first couple of years. Then I ended up going to ESPN. So I had to move from Baltimore to Connecticut, came back, I would stay there for 2 years, came back, then Dwayne was coaching. So we couldn't have that consistency the way we once had it. And we would do stuff here and there. We would be in shout out boys on the Flex Zone. We'd be on their show. We'd be, you know, whoever called us. And then we'd just do a lot of social media stuff. So 2018, it was like in January. I'm sitting there, and it was a couple of shows I was listening to. One of them was Maybe I'm Crazy with Joy Taylor. And so she's like, you know, it's a sports show. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to do a wrestling podcast. So I started, you know, doing some research. I reached out to my boys from View from the Top Rope. Shout out to them. Shout out to Big Diesel, because he was the one I talked to. And I said, hey, man, so what do y'all use? And this, that, and the other. So he was, you know, gracious enough to let me know. And that's when I created Break It Down with Brian H. I called Dwayne. I said, hey, man, I got this idea. Look, while we waiting to be able to do the show consistently again, I'm going to create a podcast. It's going to be Break It Down with Brian H. He said, oh, man, that'd be good. That'd be good for the YouTube channel. And what I have to say is, when you're working with somebody, especially like in, you know, this field that we love, it's always important to be on the same page and communicate. The thing is with like Dwayne, and it's also important not to get in the way of each other's creativity. And that's the one thing he's never done. He's never been like, hey man, what'd you put that on a YouTube channel for? Or why'd you tweet that? You know, if I have a crazy opinion, he'll say, yeah, that's the views of Brian H. Waters. So that's when I created Break It Down with Brian H. And that's how I got in the podcast. And then in end of 2019, I had the idea for the Breaking Through the Glass Ceilings podcast, because I don't know if you're a part of the National Association of Black Journalists, but I was an NABJ, and I remember just coming across so many people. And after I like continued to build my network, I thought about like, man, I'm connected to a lot of really dope people. I want to tell their stories. Like we hear about the famous people, quote unquote. I said, well, you know, I'm not gonna say like I got this huge following. Like I always say, people say, oh man, you're famous. Everybody know you. I said I can still walk in the store without getting harassed. So as long as I can still do that, I'm not famous.
That's the best way to be. That's the best sort of thing to have.
Yeah. So I said, you know, I was like, I'm gonna create this podcast. So that's how I created the Break It Down. The Break It Through Glass Ceilings podcast, where I would interview my friends and just have them share their stories. We target college students who looking for like, what can I learn, or what can I learn from this person? So that's the long story on how I got in the podcast.
I like it. You said a lot of things there that we got to touch back on that I want to get into. Like, for one, for those who don't know, let people know what the Black Association for Black Journalists is, because I think there are a lot of people who don't know what that is. Yeah,
so the National Association of Black Journalists is an organization that was really built and founded in the 70s. I want to say 75 or 76. I should know that. But it was really founded to protect Black journalists in the newsroom. They wasn't getting opportunities to get a lot of jobs, or they was getting the most dangerous assignments. So they created this organization. The first meeting was right here in Baltimore, Maryland. Shout out to one of the founders. It was a group of founders, but one of them is the one and only Dwayne Wickham, who created the School of Global Journalism at Morgan State University. And he told us, like, you know, and he's a mentor of mine, somebody I can like literally text, and he always get back to me, you know. But he told me, you know, they want Black journalists to have protection. So now, you know, it's over 3,000 plus members. Some of your, you know, notable names you'll see at the conventions, like a Robin Roberts, a Rob Parker, a Jamel Hill. You know, it's just some of the people, you know, who are there. You know, like I saw the rise of Malika Andrews and Kendra Andrews, like them being an NABJ, you know, being recognized as like the breakout stars or what have you. You know, so it's a great organization, we have a convention every year. We haven't had one in 2 years due to COVID. The last one was in Miami, and everybody's waiting to get back together this year, hopefully. But it's a great organization where, and people hear journalists, they think it's just journalism, but it's any media, public relations, video production, journalism, obviously, broadcast journalism, audio production, anything involving media. That's what we all come together. There's workshops, the biggest job fair. You have companies that obviously they want to hire more Black people. They come to NABJ and find some of the best Black candidates. It's exactly how I got my job at ESPN, which is responsible for me being at the Ringer today.
I want to get into that. So, but before we get into that far, I want to highlight what you were just talking about. How would somebody, a Black journalist who wants to be a part of this, get a part of this?
Yeah, definitely reach out. So you obviously join. You go on nabj.org and you join, but also find another member so you can get networking, like some of those group chats that's the really unofficial but official. So for instance, like we have a group chat for the sports task force. Like they have different task force, print task force, sports task force, broadcast task force, LGBTQ task force, I believe, young journalist task force. It's one that I'm missing. Visual task force, which is like the photographers, the videographers. So it's a lot of different task force where you can meet other people and they can help you network and navigate the spaces.
See, I like this because this is a resource that I'm certain a lot of Black men and women don't know exist.
Mm-hmm.
And they can use that resource to help them get further out there and to help their whether journalists, broadcasters, whatever they may be, grow in their career. So I think it's dope that you're a part of this, and it's dope that you can also open people's eyes to this whole other world that they may not know about.
I tried to.
So let me ask you this. How did you get into ESPN? I know you were saying that going to these conventions kind of helped you open your door to that. But how did you get into ESPN, and what did your job entail there?
So exactly what it was, going to NABJ 2013, fresh out of college at Morgan State University. I mentioned Dwayne Wickham. He was gracious enough to pay for all of the registered members who were all the students who were registered members of NABJ. He paid for our registration at the conference. We just, obviously had to pay to get there and pay for where we was going to stay. Shout out to my boy CJ. Me and him, I knew we flew together, and we also he got us the hotel. So it was like 4 of us in the room. We all stayed together, and it was a party, right? But the thing was, every morning, that Thursday and Friday, I think part of the Saturday, they had a job fair. Now this is back in the day when resume paper was a thing. Not sure if it still is, to be honest with you. But I went up there, had my resume paper. They had a sports task force breakfast. That was at like 7:30 or 7 o'clock. So I remember we went to the breakfast. As soon as we finished the breakfast, I had to run back to my room, grab my badge because I didn't have my badge with me, I think. And I got my badge, I was at job fair started at 9 o'clock. I was in the line at 9:03 at ESPN, and I was talking to the lady. And, one of the things that's cool is with the recruiters, they'll also send other production assistants and other people from the company there so you can ask them questions. So my good brother, Aaron Hilton, was gracious enough to let me pick his brain. And, he gave me his contact information. So not only he do that, we on my way there, I was like text him, hey man, what you think? What I had this interview, this, that. And he's like, oh yeah, this is what you want to be prepared for. And then when I got there, I ended up working like near him. We didn't work together, but like my desk was like literally right behind his desk. So it made the gap even easier. And then shout out to my friend Alex, Alexander, she's now Alex Gibalisco. She was somebody who had graduated from Morgan 2 years before I did. So when I told her, she went out of her way, made sure that my transition was great. And like, that was the thing. But like I said, going to NABJ, going there and, that's what really helped me. I was prepared, obviously, resume, suit, shirt and tie, presentable, knocked the interview out. And then When I got there, I was a production assistant, so had quite a few jobs. They put you through a rotation. I started off with anybody who's like college football fans. I mean, fans of TV in general, but really I did this for college football. Was what they call sales quality control. So I had to watch it and make sure all of the sales ads ran properly. So if like you saw the video flash Buffalo Wild Wings, had to make sure that they flashed, the animation happened, that they said what was on the script. And if they didn't, like they was, let's say like for the broadcast, they had to meet 6 sales ads. If they only hit 5, I would have to let the producer know, hey, you missed this one. I had this time frame, and then I had to mark the time frames when they ran the other ones. So I did that for about 4 months. And then I went to ABC News 1/highlights, which is watching the game and then cutting the highlight for it. Now, if you like sports, you may change after highlights. I was in love with baseball. I'm having, I don't know if I can say this on here, but I'm not really feeling baseball at the moment. I don't know when this is going to air, but at the time, Barry Bonds didn't get in the Hall of Fame. So I'm very salty about that. He's not even my favorite player. I'm a Ken Griffey Jr. fan, but it's the principle that matters.
And I agree 100% with you. And I will kick with you on this fact. Barry Bonds should 100% be in the Hall of Fame. And it's ridiculous and stupid that he's not.
How much, like, we talk about sales ads, right?
We can talk about whatever you want to with this.
No, I'm saying earlier, how much did baseball eat off of Barry Bonds, off of Sammy Sosa? They have not eaten that much from a player since. As much as I love Shohei Ohtani, as much as I love Mike Trout, as much as I love some of these other players, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, none of them have made baseball must-see TV the way those guys did. Throw Mark McGwire in there too. Throw Ken Griffey Jr. in there too. Saturday and today's kids will not be able to understand that baseball was appointment viewing television on a Saturday afternoon or on a Friday night. Because when those guys were coming up to bat, everything stopped. Yeah. So, but I bring that up. I was talking about how much you love baseball. I love baseball. When you got to cut a highlight, and that means you have to pay attention to every detail of the game. Basketball is the hardest sport because you're trying to imagine you're on a computer, you're watching the game, you got the computer has like this timer, and every time something happens, you got to log it. So you imagine Steph Curry shoots a shot, misses the rebound. Draymond Green gets the rebound. He puts the shot back up. He misses it. Klay Thompson gets the rebound. He misses it. LeBron James comes down, drives down the lane. He goes for a layup. He misses it. Anthony Davis comes and dunks it. You got to try to your best to log every single thing that just happened.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so imagine, baseball is easier, but it's still something you can like fall asleep because you really just log the time when the batter comes up and then you hit 1, 2, like ball, strike, ball, whatever. But if it's a foul ball or if they show a cutaway, you want to log that. And because you're not only logging for that particular your game, but somebody today could go back and look at one of my logs because they're looking for a certain highlight. It's like the research there is so in depth. So, and they have like such a big research department. So if they're looking for, let's see, in 2014, when Chris Davis of the Baltimore Orioles hit a home run against the Milwaukee Brewers, they might have to look for that. And then, so if I didn't log it properly, then it makes it harder. So, I did that. And then afterwards, after highlights, I didn't want to do that. I went to the people and told them. So I worked on the Mike and Mike in the morning. I don't know if y'all remember that show.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I worked on that. It was fun, but it was repetitive, but it was really cool because I had a very good producer, Seth Horowitz. Shout out to him. We're working with my buddy Nate, and then my buddy West and my buddy Nate. And the cool part was, the worst part of the job was getting up to 2:30 in the morning, be to work at 3:30, and work from 3:30 to 10. We were supposed to work 3:30 to 12, but back then it was like once the show is over, you go home. So yeah, we worked 3:30 to 10. Every now and again, maybe like had to help out with another show or whatever, but you literally just cutting highlights for whatever they're going to talk about. So that was fun. Like now with your team, like Seth was really fun to work with because he would give you like the highlight of your team. So I worked on a football season. So football was very heavy. Monday, like the first few weeks, she was cutting every game. By the time got to like week 8, week 9, you kind of only cut like the more premier games. But what happened was like the playoffs, and at the time I was a Ravens and Cowboys fan in 2014 because I'm old enough to remember when Baltimore didn't have a team. And at that time, when, if y'all remember, the real Deflategate was against the Ravens.
Yes.
I had to cut. They lost the same weekend as Dez Bryant caught the ball against the Packers. So I had to go into work and log that highlight. You know, I mean, not log it, but I had to cut the highlights from that so they could talk about it. The same way OBJ made that catch. You know, that season also was the Orioles was in the playoffs, and when they didn't beat the Royals, and just looking at that footage over and over again. So that's the thing about working in sports. You find you have to regroup fast. You know, side story, fast forward in my future, I did some utility work for CBS Sports and Fox Sports. And I remember I did a Ravens Steelers game. And it was the game when the Ravens threw the ball they was down, like they ended up losing by a touchdown, or maybe not a touchdown. It was a close game, but it was because it was like the Ravens' first game back with fans. And I remember like Lamar Jackson, the last play, threw it to Willie Snead, and Snead dropped the ball. And I'm sitting there, and it's like, you ain't got time to walk away and you know, be sad. You got to get cleaning up the production equipment. So that's, you know, the thing about working in sports. But my last assignment there was social media, which was real cool. That's where I really learned. It made me more marketable. Working in social media, I learned how to tweet, how to target certain audiences, what content works, when to use a GIF, when to use a video, etc. So that was a lot of fun.
I like that. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
You took all these skills that you have that you accumulated from ESPN, and now you're working at the Ringer. What's that like? What's the differences between ESPN and the Ringer, per se?
Well, one, we remote, so that's fun. But also, I'm just working on wrestling. I mean, I do work on other stuff when needed, so that's cool. Like, but it's just strictly, well, it is strictly audio. But you know, in order to promote, you gotta have some video assets. So I've been doing some video assets, but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the opportunity to work with, you know, my team, getting a chance to, you know, really work with, you know, getting a chance to work wrestling stuff, you know, work around wrestling content. Now I have to watch wrestling so I can make sure that I can, you know, I mean, obviously my show hosts, they know what they're doing, but I can say, well, yo, we got to talk about this. So we got to hint on this because the XYZ. So it's been phenomenal.
I feel like it's been even more phenomenal considering the last few years, all these wrestling companies, like, you know, you got AEW done came up, seemingly out of nowhere, came up to become prominent. Then you got GCW doing their thing. And then you got little things, but like I said, like I was talking about earlier, how the black voice in wrestling feels like it's being heard more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And like just this past week or two ago, we just had Terminus, huge event highlighting black wrestlers and things like that. Where years ago we wouldn't have had that. So what is it like covering wrestling in this kind of like I want to say resurgence?
Yeah,
popularity of wrestling. What is that like?
It's been fun. It's really dope to be, you know, being on another black podcast. Working with a lot of other wrestling podcasts, a lot of black wrestling podcasts. Like I said, just now that I hate to say it this way, no, I ain't gonna say that. Now that the resources are more affordable, it's showing that if you give a black person an inch, they'll take a mile. We always hear that in a negative connotation, in a negative way, but we've seen that now. You know, I look at, you know, just being on here, one of the things I like is the professionalism. You know, you've invested in your brand. You have a professional mic. You're not just sitting up here, you know, just doing this on the computer mic, which is okay. You know, sometimes that's all people can afford. But what we're seeing is with this black wrestling research, it says a lot of black wrestling fans, you know, understand, okay, we're going to work. And we're also showing our diversity because, you know, one of the things that Bobby Lashley talked about, which I can catch on Mackmania, is when they created the Hurt Business, they wanted to show a different light. They didn't want to see just a black thug or a black dancer. And that's the thing that we're showing with these podcasts. You have like some of the people, I've heard some black podcasts. I'm like, yo, this person grew up in the hood. I didn't know they like wrestling. And then you had some black people who like was like sheltered. You know, I probably fall into the sheltered category. But you have like my co-host. People see, okay, obviously the first day they go say, oh, he played basketball. Yeah, he did. He coached, but he's in the skateboard. He's into skateboarding real heavy. He's into all the nerd culture. He can tell you about, then you got like people who like my boy Corey, he understands the shoe culture, who loves wrestling. He's the one who, he's my go-to when I'm thinking about getting a belt or something. I was like, yo, Corey, so what you think? Like he was over here like telling me like, man, you got this belt. This is worth a lot of money. So that's my big bro right there. But we're seeing the diversity with wrestlers, and it's also reflected, and I think it's important. But one of the things too is the black wrestler are understanding the importance of the black wrestling podcast, and understanding the importance of the black wrestling media. I gotta give a shout out to my boy Trey D from We Love Wrestling. He goes out and he covers like everything. If there's anybody that when he says like we love wrestling, it's not a gimmick. It's the truth, because he could be covering stuff. I'm like, I asked him, I said, man, you be traveling. He said, well, sometimes, I travel for work. I'm there, I'm gonna go check out a wrestler show. And if he don't know about a wrestler, he gonna do his research. And then he'll tell us about, hey, make sure y'all check out this. Let me do it like Terry. Yo, make sure y'all check out this wrestler. But no, I shout out to him, then you got like companies like, the Black Wrestling Podcast, where it's wrestling from a black wrestling perspective, and you sit there, you just feel like you could sit there and watch your uncles. They're gonna be mad when I say this, but your uncles who's sitting at the cookout with their 40s and they just talk about wrestling, and then you come to the wrestling realm. Well, we're gonna tell you, one, we're gonna give you an education on how to be a wrestling fan, because a lot of times wrestling fans tend to jump out of their lane. And it's like the way it will say when people go into like the dirt sheets and the issues, like, look, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about what they show me on TV. Let's talk about that. I don't care about the gossip and all this. It's a place for it, but not the wrestling realm. And I mean, it's so many wrestling podcasts out here, black wrestling podcasts out here that once I start naming. Like my boy Duke, he's an investigative reporter, investigative podcast. He'll sit there and let you know, like, look, and then you got people like those wrestling girls, right? Who go give you about the women. And then you got the mixed tag show, where you got wrestling from a black man and a black woman's perspective. I just said I wasn't gonna name them any.
Hey, name all the ones you want to name, brother. I love it.
Yeah, like, and I got, obviously, I'm gonna stop right here. But I gotta give my boy Terrence a shout out from TW Talked About. That's my Impact guy. He gonna get on me. You don't cover Impact Wrestling. I don't watch it as often as you do, brother. So I go to your podcast. And then the Big Gold Belt Media, where they have a mixture. So the Black Wrestling Podcast, man, it's taken over. It's taken over. And I mean, Black Sports Podcasts in general, we see that. But it's they're giving us an inch. They let us get access to this equipment and these resources. And now we here. We're not going nowhere.
I agree. Let me ask you this, because I think this is another important aspect of everything we was talking about. How much do you think Kofi Mania played a part in all this? And what I mean by that is because when Kofi Kingston won that title, that shift happened that I don't think we've seen before. Like, even when Booker T won the title, we loved Booker T. We loved him having the title and stuff like that. It didn't feel like what it did with Kofi Mania Kid, and he won it, because he felt like he won it for the people. So how much do you think, matter of fact, how many black fans you think in general that one moment brought into wrestling? Because it was such a big moment. And it's still relevant to today, because you see Bobby Lashley getting his championship, Big E getting his championship. It's just kind of been a constant thing where, especially with WWE. WWE's been doing an excellent job with that, by the way, in terms of highlighting black wrestlers. You can say what you want to say about the ending of it, but they are making a better effort than they did when I was growing up.
The thing about Kofi Mania, man. So first you had you brought up Booker T. Booker T was a heel, and he was such a good heel. So it was like, and then there wasn't as many like forums for us to like really voice. So I think it's a credit to him for him getting into that spot, and it wasn't forced, right? Kofi Mania, it was such a great story, and just like some of the underlying dynamics, right? You had Daniel Bryan, who's the best person to put him over because he was like during the Yes movement, it was the man of the people, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the underdog, the ultimate underdog story. But then you had Kofi Mania, which was the underdog story, but it was also the looked over story. Like Daniel Bryan was just always told, like, he's sure, like, yeah, we see you there, but you're still too little. You're still just not good enough. Well, Kofi Mania was like, wait a minute. Oh, wait, you still here? Well, you do the cool stuff, but and I think it definitely brought a lot of Black people together. I always talk about, for me, in my room, in my basement that day was my kids, my dad, my uncle who I mentioned earlier who got me into wrestling, and his kids. My boy, Dwayne, my boy Blake, who was one of the people who was influential when I was doing backstage work with Women's Superstars United, WSU, working with ladies like Mia Yim, Mercedes Martinez, Kiera Hogan, etc. He was, one of the people, he was the booker. But yeah, my little cousin, who his dad, before he passed away, was somebody whose house I would always go to and watch wrestling. But then my little cousin was like, kind of like he was into it. And then I'm missing somebody. There's somebody else here. But maybe that's it. But all of us was here together. And when that 3 hit, everybody just rejoiced. And that was the thing. Like, Kofi brought in the Black fans, but he also brought in the white fans too. Because I remember wearing a Kofi Kingston shirt during WrestleMania weekend. I didn't go, and people were coming up to me saying, "Man, I really hope he gets it." So it was like the overlooked guy, but he also didn't have to change who he was, and that's what he represented. So I definitely think that was a huge moment, but I think it was solidified with Bianca Belair.
I was going to say that too.
I think it was solidified with her, especially bringing Black, because hitting that pop culture audience, and Naomi did her thing too. Can't discredit her, but like Bianca was like my daughter is like a huge Bianca Belair fan, and it started like at WrestleMania, just seeing her, and like the way Bianca like is like, I don't want to say like looks like a doll baby, but like they can market her like and replicate dolls of her, like her action figure, but they wanted to replicate dolls of her, and little girls could see themselves in Bianca Belair.
Yeah, everything about her is positive in terms of like she has the long, cool hair. She's super athletic. She's not like, she doesn't look like a quote unquote, she's a beautiful woman, but doesn't look like a quote unquote WWE diva. She looks like like an athlete, and she's 100% a full athlete, and she's super cool.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I think like had it been like, I think if it didn't, also thinking about the time, right, where with Bianca, with Big E, we saw them open up about the tragic events that was happening.
Yeah.
And they was able to be relatable. So like, unfortunately for Naomi and Kofi, well, fortunately, but fortunately for them, stuff wasn't happening. But like after Big E and with Big E and with Bianca, they came at a time, it was like after we saw them show that they can relate to us. Like, just because they, close to being millionaires, if not millionaires, didn't mean they wasn't affected by the killings of the George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery.
Yes, very, very much so. And I appreciate that they showed it, and WWE didn't try to silence it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I know WWE often gets looked at as a bad guy and all that stuff, but there are certain things that they get right, and that's one of the things they did get right in terms of like how football didn't get it right. A lot of sports did not get it right. WWE got it right. Big E had the Black Lives Matter badge on its arm. A lot of wrestlers had it on their arm. They kind of like did their thing, and I appreciate them for that.
Absolutely.
So, final question.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see wrestling going in 10 years pertaining to black wrestlers?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think we'll start 10 years, man. Before you, it's one of the stages you can blink. Like last year was the 10-year anniversary of the Wrestling Wrealm, right?
Yes.
And when we started the show, I want to say, just think when our first episode aired, John Cena was the WWE champion, and Randy Orton was the world heavyweight champion. 10-year anniversary shows up. Let's just say it was June 1st. Bobby Lashley was the WWE champion, and Roman Reigns was the Universal champion. So I do think we'll start to see more black wrestlers. I mean, there's so many out there.
Swerve Scott.
I worry about All Elite Wrestling. And I'm going to tell you why. They have this show called AEW Dark and Dark Elevation. They're bringing on independent wrestlers, and they deserve those opportunities. And more importantly, they deserve those paychecks.
Yes, very much so.
However, it's harder to see them be looked at as bigger superstars when they're losing to people that's not better than them. Brandy Rhodes, this opinion is of Brian H. Waters and no one else. Okay. I don't want nobody else to get heat. Brandy Rhodes beat Willow Nightingale.
Which is ridiculous.
On an independent wrestling show. Nowhere with an intelligent booker is that happening.
I understand why it happened, and AEW has to get out of the habit of doing it. Because I'm glad you brought this up, because AEW has the habit of doing this thing where they have people, if they're not signed to AEW, they're eating the pin, no matter how good they are. So you have a situation like Willow Nightingale, who we know damn well is a far better wrestler than Brandy Rhodes. Not taking nothing away from Brandy Rhodes. I think she's a great mind in terms of wrestling like that and things like that. But we know, the indie wrestling fans know who Willow Nightingale is. She's blown up the scene everywhere. You can't help but not hear about her. So when you have Brandy Rhodes beat her, and the only reason why it really happens is, well, she's not signed to AEW, kind of feels hollow.
And see, here's the thing. This is why I worry about the independent wrestlers, especially the black ones. Because, sure, that happens, right? Now, it's not going to mess up their stock on the independent level.
Not at all.
But when they go to AEW, let's say they sign, what do you see? The record. 0-32.
Yes. 0-3, 0-5.
Mm-hmm. So then, so that's the thing. Like now watching Janiyah Kai lose to Layla Hirsch in about 20 seconds was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that's the thing I worry about. But I do think, I don't have a wrestling promotion, so I can't. I don't have $1 billion. So I can't tell somebody, hey man, don't go to AEW because you keep building your stock. But like, it do make you wonder as we start to see more the WWE releases 90-day clauses be up. Which ones are they going to do that to? Do you see them doing that to Mia Yim? We don't see, obviously, I wouldn't think they would do that to a Swerve Scott or a Keith Lee. But what about Tahuti? Do you see that them doing that with him? Or his name was Adonis from the Hit Row.
Yeah.
Would you see them doing that with Brandy from Hit Row? So it makes you, and so I have a solution. This is, if I'm booking, if you give me the pin, my AEW Dark show would be like my Sunday Night Heat. That would be the show where I would put the wrestlers who are like next in line to get on Dynamite, that's where they would wrestle. So it'd be AEW versus AEW wrestlers. And then on Dark Elevation, if I'm trying to get these tryout matches, I'm trying to see how this person is doing, because that's what you're thinking about. Dark Elevation is supposed to be this person's getting a look to see if we want to sign them, right? Not, oh, let's just bring them in just to get beat, you know? So I would put, let's just say, two people who, you know, I would put, let's say, a Darius Carter versus a Miles Hawkins, you know, have them two go against each other. And then, you know, so that's how I would do that. But from a fan standpoint, how am I, and from a casual fan, right? Somebody who's grew up watching WWE, didn't take well to the Attitude Era Fallen or Ruthless Aggression Era Fallen, didn't like the PG stuff, so I got out of it. Now I'm gonna come back and watch this. So you're telling me they got this new wrestling promotion, so I'm gonna watch AEW Dark because it's on YouTube. And I see these people losing, so I'm automatically gonna think, oh, they're not that good. And that's the thing. I think a lot of times AEW is in that wrestling bubble, and a lot of the internet wrestling fans are in that wrestling bubble. They don't see the stories and entertainment. It's one of the things Swole called out, the lack of structure. Everybody can't go out there and speak for themselves. That's why you need a writing team. So I root for AEW, but yeah, I do worry about, that's what I worry about, the black wrestler. But as far as WWE is concerned, I think we'll start to see it turn, you know, see them turn out more. You know, you got people down at NXT, one person to watch out for, Mari Miller. You know, shout out to her. She was Cameron Burnett. She's if you go through Wrestling for the Culture archives, I talked to her right after her. She was an enhancement talent for Lacey Evans. Then, or maybe it was right after, it was around COVID happened. But now, you know, she signed with them. She was on NXT. She might be on there tonight. So, you know, she's somebody to look out for. So it's a lot of people that I do think they'll have some good opportunities. I mean, look at Carmelo Hayes. I would love to see in 10 years Carmelo Hayes be main event in WrestleMania.
I can see that.
Or Montez Ford, you know, and Angelo Dawkins. I don't think we getting the Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels. And here's the reason why that statement can be blown out of proportion and misused. Because people act like Marty Jannetty didn't win an Intercontinental Championship. The problem with Marty Jannetty was that he wasn't worth the headache for that he was given, where unfortunately for him, Shawn Michaels was.
Yeah.
You know, Shawn Michaels kept getting better because it was a time you probably wouldn't remember when Marty was better than Shawn. And, you know, but Shawn kept getting better. So even with all the stuff that he was doing, he was still like, Marty just wasn't worth the headache. So that's why he kept getting fired. It was like, it wasn't the way Marty was booked. It was Marty's demons that got him in trouble. But people like to say that Shawn Michaels to Marty Jannetty. I don't think you get that with the Street Profits. I think they still have a lot of room to grow. I want to see them have a heel run. I start to see them turn like a little bit more darker. I don't think it's time to make them heel yet, but I do think they get a couple more tag title reigns. But then I do think, you know, down the line, you know, Montez Ford, future WWE champion.
I think a better comparison than them would be the Scott Hall, Kevin Nash outsiders comparison. As both of them can go separate, and they still can both do their thing and be popular doing their thing.
The thing about them, though, was, let's be honest, like, they were separate, then they came together. You know, there was Razor Ramon, there was Diesel, you know, and if at the time when we was children, we didn't care about what was going backstage, so we didn't know they were like best of friends, you know. So, but I definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. Man, this has been a blast talking to you, man. This has been great.
Likewise, I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem at all, but let them know where to find you at.
So Google me, Brian H. Waters, but you follow me at Brian H. Waters. Shout out to my dad. His name is Howard, so I'll put two and two together. But yeah, so follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or just on all social media platforms. Try to keep it consistent. Also, make sure you follow Wrealm, Wrealm spelled with a W. Shout out to my mother for the alliteration. Shout out to my wife, who always patient when I do podcasting, and my kids who always patient. But yeah, shout out to them. But you can also have a fan page, Brian H. Waters Talk Show Host, or B Waters Productions, my production company. And what else? Also, follow me on every Tuesday. Mackmania drops. I wasn't on this week's show. I was just producing, and I had a lot of fires to put up, but we got it done. We had Bobby Lashley and Sam Roberts on. So follow us at It's Mackmania. And you can follow at Ringer Wrestling, where we, you got the Mackmania show, you got Cheap Heat podcast with Rosenberg and Stack Eye Greg and Dip. And then you also have the Masked Man show with David Shoemaker and Kaz. So make sure you check that out. But yeah, I'm a part of that network. And then shout out to Ashley, Kelsey, Renee, and Brandon and Millennial Media Mavis. That was all born through NABJ, by the way. But we will be doing a Super Bowl preview show. Matter of fact, I gotta get with them to get the graphics so I can make the graphics for our Super Bowl, our NFC Championship and AFC Championship predictions. Man, last week I was 0-4.
That's bad.
Yeah, I'm 2-8 in the playoffs. And part of it was because I bet it. Well, I ain't bet, obviously, but I went with my heart in the first round because I don't like the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm a Ravens fan, and I ain't like when I'm pouring on the score. But I was not putting there, and I believed in Bill Belichick. I believed, and I clearly was wrong. Now, last week, I just knew Aaron Rodgers was going to get it done. He didn't. I just knew Tom Brady was going to get it done. He didn't. I just knew Derrick Henry was going to be effective. He wasn't, and I just knew that the Bills, and I was 13 seconds away.
so
I
think
lesson
here to be learned is whoever Brian picks, pick the opposite.
Well, I'll tell you this. I want the 49ers. The 49ers was always my second favorite team, right? Even when it was Ravens, Cowboys, 49ers number 2. I want them to win the Super Bowl. So therefore, I will be picking the Los Angeles Rams because when I pick against the 49ers, they win. So I'm picking the Rams this week.
Okay.
How about you? What's your pick?
I think the Rams are going to win. I think they are.
Whoever comes from the NFC, that's who I hope win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I'm tired. I'm tired of the Chiefs, but I sure don't want the Bengals to get to the Super Bowl.
It's possible.
Yeah, I know.
Man, thank you for coming on, brother. I got to have you back on again soon, man.
Yeah, just let me know. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. As always, Delvin Cox Experience, we are out. Peace.